It's March, and you know what that means. It's basketball time. So we're back on the big mountain to preview the Mountain West tournament.
Hey, welcome back to the Mountain. I am JY. This is my good friend Steven. We have Ricky Thompson on with us again. Yesterday, we talked about a recap of the Mountain West men's basketball schedule and results. And today, we're going to talk about the tournament, which starts tomorrow on Wednesday. We've got the seedings already figured out, and Ricky's going to tell us kind of the highlights of the seedings and what he thinks is going to happen throughout this whole tournament. So, Ricky, welcome back to the mountain. Let's get right into this.
Right. Thank you guys for having me back. As we know, conference tournament for the Mountain West will start on Wednesday. First game being Wyoming and San Jose State, followed by Nevada and Fresno State. And then the final, I don't know if it'll, yeah, the final game will be UNLV and Air Force. And historically, just looking at which seeds have won the tournament over time, it's usually the number one or the two seed, each winning 9 times. The three seed only winning 1 time, the four seed 3 times, five seed once, and then the Lobos made it 2 times at a six seed, has actually won 4 days in a row and made the run all the way to the title. And the 7 through 11 seeds have never done so. So going to be tough sledding for those teams 7 and below. First, I wanted to dive into San Jose State and Wyoming, which is actually uh, probably going to be one of the closer matchups I would expect in the first round here. San Jose State actually swept Wyoming for the first time in, I think, program history and winning at Wyoming for the first time ever.
Wow.
The thing about San Jose State and this Tim Miles coach team is they've really been battling the injury bug, only having 7 or 8 players dress in some games. Losing star player Josh Udeze, he is now back. Starting guard Will McClendon, I believe he may be coming back. Donovan Yap, who's one of their best shooters, played in the last game. And then big man from my area, San Mateo, around here, a local kid from the Bay, Robert Viola, who would be my comeback player of the year after missing all of last year with an injury. He's really the big man that makes this offense go, averaging around 7 or 8 rebounds a game, able to pass. It looks like he will be back as well for the Spartans. Wyoming does have, capable scorers in Obi Ogbum, Jordan Nesbitt, Cole Henry down low provides a post presence that he's really battled guys down there, including making life hard for Nelly Jr. Joseph of New Mexico. Both times that Wyoming played UNM, it was tough. So I think Wyoming and San Jose will have an even game. I think San Jose just has a little more talent, a little more depth. Latrell Davis on the bench who is really just like a spark plug coming out of nowhere. He'll run you over and then he'll knock down a three in your face. And that's really how San Jose State was able to beat New Mexico at home. They have a lot of athletes that are very streaky shooting the ball. And when they get streaky, I mean, they were up double digits on San Diego State. They were up double digits on a Utah State. So I think the San Jose State team is fairly dangerous when healthy. I would expect them to beat Wyoming and they'll get that third matchup with the Lobos. It's looking like, on Thursday at 12 o'clock Pacific in that second round. And I don't know if the Lobos really want to face San Jose State again, because even in the pit, it was a very close game, which was almost even at halftime. And some heroics by Donovan Dent, allowed the Lobos to pull it out. So in this 8-9 game, I'm going to go with San Jose State, the Trojans, and Tim Miles, probably my favorite coach in the conference, to win this one over Sundance Wicks and the Cowboys, who've kind of been sliding down the mountain here these past few weeks.
Yeah.
Hopping into the next game, Nevada and Fresno. Nevada is the 7 seed. Fresno is the 10 seed. In the final game, Fresno only played 6 players. I don't really know. They might only have 7 or 8 bodies available due to the gambling violations where players were gambling on their own player props in both directions. One player was gambling on himself to hit the over on total points, while another was, I believe, betting the under and things of that nature.
Right.
Coach Vance Wahlberg, a first-year coach, has not had much success. Going to be very difficult to win in the tournament, even though, they're facing a Nevada team who has not had a good season either. Trey Coleman, the all-time leader in games played for Nevada, is out with an injury. That is a huge blow to the Wolfpack defensively, leadership-wise. They have not played well, but I think the Wolfpack can beat Fresno State. Even though Fresno State, we have to remember, took Nevada to overtime earlier this year, and the Wolfpack had to, hold on just to beat Fresno. So that could be anyone's game. I think Nevada will be favored, and I'll pick them to win there. Um, Looking at UNLV, the sixth seed versus number 11 seed Air Force. Air Force just a brutal, brutal season for them this year, going 1-19 in conference play. Coach Joe Scott only getting 4 wins for the whole season. The one bright spot the Falcons really had was Ethan Morton scoring 14 points a game, 5 rebounds. They just cannot really match up with the teams in the conference this year athletically. Their best player, Petrides, transferred to Cal, where I believe he's coming off the bench, but probably getting some nice NIL money instead of staying at Air Force. So I don't know how Air Force ever kind of climbs out of this cycle that we're in now with NIL and money being thrown around. So it's going to be very difficult for Air Force to play with UNLV, even though UNLV has been bit by the injury bug as well. Star player Deadon Thomas, point guard, sophomore, has been out the past few weeks. But to many surprise, UNLV has played much better. Ball movement has been better, and Julian Rishwain, a senior transfer, had been shooting the ball well. The issue was Julian Rishwain also went down in New Mexico in the final game, looked like a knee injury. They don't think he'll be, coming back. And that's on top of losing Rob Whaley early in the year, who only played a handful of games, was someone I spoke to at media days and never even made it to play a conference game this year. That being said, I think UNLV still has enough talent. Coach Kruger has been getting the team to play better together the past few weeks, winning 6 out of 8 down the stretch, and did play New Mexico tough in that final game. And UNLV just has a lot of goofy things going on in their athletic department right now, with I believe the president or an AD being in flux, and then we're finding out that Coach Kevin Kruger actually had an unknown contract extension and a $2 million buyout, which will keep him, we will think, in place there in UNLV at least for the next year, despite many fans not liking that thought right now. But I think UNLV will win that game. Let's see who they would play. They would be playing Utah State in that next round. And I don't know at this point in time if UNLV has the bodies to match up with Utah State in that second round, and would imagine Utah State having the edge over UNLV in that second round. But looking then on to the Thursday games, like I mentioned, New Mexico will have that early game probably playing San Jose. Following that, we'll have San Diego State and Boise. Two teams that are really playing for their lives right now. I think Boise, with that win over Nevada, can consider themselves in. The injury to Mugu Nguath has been huge, and we're hearing now that he may return. We don't know if that's going to be during the conference tournament or hopefully in postseason play. After that, we will see him. Regardless, I think San Diego State is a better team than Boise. Many more big guys that are capable, and we'll give Degenhart Cardenas a hard time. But I think Boise playing for their life right now, it's anyone's game. That San Diego State Boise game, that will be probably the game of the day on Thursday. Colorado State will look like their first game will be against Nevada on Thursday as well. Would think Colorado State will be favored in that first round matchup. and meeting Utah State probably in that semifinal game after that. Um, but as far as favorites, looking at this from a whole, I think we have to say New Mexico, even though they are on the side of a bracket with the three teams they lost to this year. San Jose, San Diego State, and Boise, they all lost to, and they're going to have to beat, two out of those three to do so in the conference tournament here. But I think they have some momentum now. Um, After winning the regular season title, they were cutting down the nets in Albuquerque the other night. They're riding high off of that. They're really feeling it from the people in Albuquerque and the pit crowd. So they're going to be a tough out, even though, Boise and San Diego State are going to give them one hell of a game, whoever it is, I think, in that semifinal versus New Mexico. But I really like Colorado State and New Mexico as the two favorites, and I'm hoping we get to see them in the final. But I guess from your guys' perspective, what do you think would be the most entertaining final, or is there two teams you would really hope for that we get to see play on that Saturday?
Yeah, I mean, I'm interested to see what happens here in that kind of that 4, 5, 6, ranking. You mentioned how much, the top two seeds have really just, if you're a top two seed in the Mountain West here historically, you're very highly likely to at least be in the final, if not, win the tournament. There's very few upsets. Look at last year in UNM. That does not happen very often in the Mountain West. It's typically, your top couple seeds are the ones that are going to win the tournament. So I'm interested in kind of that 4, 5, 6, especially 4, 5. I mean, this 4, 5 matchup with San Diego State. I mean, who'd have thunk coming into this that San Diego State is the 4 seed having to play Boise, as you mentioned on our recap episode, then kind of the overall number 1 team coming into the season. This is 4 or 5 in this, for them, the first round. It is in the second round of the tournament, but it's their first game that they're having to play. Who would have thunk that coming into this? And I think that's a huge game, obviously, for both of these teams. And if they have aspirations, obviously, in going into the NCAA tournament, I'm actually more interested in I have expectations that the Lobos are going to do well. They'll be in the final, in my opinion. And I think CSU stacks up really well. I'm really focused on this San Diego State versus Boise game. And the winner of that game, does that give them the momentum then to propel themselves to a potential Mountain West championship game? So that's where I'm at with this. I'm surprised that we're seeing this 4-5 Boise San Diego State matchup here on a Thursday schedule. And again, as I said, the winner of that, does that help them propel to at least a final bid, if not potentially a Mountain West championship bid? Because the Aztecs, while they have a solid schedule overall, they're clearly not as high as they would want to be in the NCAA rankings. And certainly Boise has to win in order to get in. So they're a win to get into the NCAA tournament here. Being where they were at preseason, I'm just super interested in whoever wins that game is, I guess, to answer your question, whoever wins that game is the team that I'm interested in to see what happens for the rest of the season or the rest of the tournament there, Steve. What are you thinking?
Well, yeah, the 4-5 game is so intriguing because I think a lot of people would have thought these would be the number 1 and 2 seeds, coming into
right.
A lot of people would have assumed that. So it is very intriguing. It almost feels, and Ricky knows this better than us, but it almost feels like a win, and you're like almost like you need to win it to stay alive.
Almost.
Ricky's saying he thinks San Diego State's already in. Hopefully they are.
Right.
Especially with their record, they have that credibility. But it almost kind of just feels like hey, you need to win to stay alive kind of thing. I'm really the Lobos. They're locked in. They're one of the best teams in the country.
Right.
If they really push the maximum effort, I think they'll win this tournament. But you may see, and we see this in conference tournaments sometimes, where they already know they can coast. Even if they don't make it to the final, they're going to have a good seed. So that kind of sets up sometimes for teams who are desperate to really push. Well, the Lobos last year were the desperate
Yes.
team, went through and won the tournament.
Right.
So to me, it's really interesting. Utah State, the first half of the season, they were so good, so dominant. In the second half of the season, it's been Colorado State.
Yes.
So that would be really interesting to see. And I don't know exactly how the brackets are lined up if they would play each other before a final, but if they do come together, that would be interesting. Kind of that first half, the first half hot team versus the second half of the season hot team. But I want to turn it back to a question for you, Ricky. Outside of the top three seeds, is there a team that you could see? Well, I'll say outside the top two seeds. Is there a team that you could see that needs to? They're a contender, but they need to go all the way through and fight their way through and win like the Lobos did last year to get in. And who would be that team for you?
Right, you're hitting the nail on the head with a Colorado State. Their non-conference losses were so detrimental early in the year that at this point they still are on the outside bubble, and I think they have that desperation knowing they have to win out. They've won 7 in a row. They're looking good while doing it. They're outperforming all their analytics. And the other team is a Boise State, right, who you've mentioned as well. They probably have to win out. I know they're on the outer bubble. Maybe if they beat San Diego State, taking into account what the other bubble teams do from other conferences, they might have a shot. But I think if you're Boise, you don't want to risk it after knowing, that New Mexico would not have been in last year and they had to win the tournament to get in. I would be taking that same approach if I'm Colorado State or Boise, just based on the way the Mountain West has been seeded in recent history and selected for the tournament. It has not been to the Mountain West favor, right? Last year, even when we had the 6 teams, they got seeded lower. We had 2 play-in games, a
Yep.
Boise and a Colorado State that, in my eyes, didn't deserve to be there. So
100%.
this year they're going to have to prove it because the Mountain West has not won a lot in the NCAA tournament, and that affects, the seasons going forward, unfortunately. So I think Boise and Colorado State, they're ready to win out, and they'll be most desperate. And I agree. We could see one of those teams that just needs it more, right, to make a run here, because there's about 3 or 4 coaches in this league that are some of the best in the country, and that being Medved. I think Leon Rice is one of the best, even though he gets a lot of haters. Boise State has really become relevant because of him in basketball and been to the tournament 3 years in a row. And without him, I don't know what they would be doing. So I think those 2 teams would definitely have what it takes because they have the leadership, the coaching, and the hunger right now, to really want that.
Well, I was gonna say what you mentioned CSU. We didn't mention CSU. That's probably honestly, if I were to pick a team that I'm most interested to see what happens in the tournament, it would be Colorado State because of how well they've played here recently. I really want to see if they're able to continue that through the tournament, because their trajectory here of late in the month and a half has been phenomenal. So while I like the focus on the 4-5 game, the San Diego State Boise game. I also really like to focus on the Rams to see how well they're going to play. And I appreciate you bringing up last year. I hated the seedings. We got 6 in. It was great. And we, on the mountain, we were cheering for it. And then we get the NCAA seedings. And I went, what the heck is going on right now? I mean, we were given, as you said, 2 of those play-in games, which was completely absurd. I mean, I still hate that. I kind of put that in the back of my mind until you bring that back up, and I'm like, oh, that's right. The Mountain West got screwed last year with the seedings, in my opinion, and we're not going to get 6 this year. I mean, we all know that, but I'm hoping we push for 4. We'll get to that here in a minute. I want to see if where you're at on that. But what do you have, Steve?
Well, that's kind of where I was going, and I'm just going to go on because that's what everybody wants to know. I've seen suggestions that the Mountain West could get as many as 5 teams in, but it really seems like from what you're saying in the past, out of the top 5 contenders, or even if you say top 6, if you make UNLV one of those, they almost you have multiple teams that need to win the whole tournament to get in. So what do you see as the maximum reasonable, kind of like a minimum maximum, range? Is it like a 3 to 5? Is it more limited? What's your thoughts on that? What's your feel?
Yeah, I would agree with that 3 to 5 range. I think for me, I'm considering San Diego State in right now based on what I've looked at today and them beating Nevada pretty handedly. We have to remember they beat Houston, they beat Creighton early on. They smashed New Mexico at home along with some other wins. So I think their resume should hopefully stand up to be the third team, with an at-large with New Mexico and Utah State, regardless of if San Diego State wins it or not. When you're looking at Boise and Colorado, Boise looks like to be the closer into the bubble right now. They suffered bad losses early on to, at Boston College and forget who else, Washington State. But they beat a Clemson team who's one of the best teams in the ACC. They beat a St. Mary's team who won the West Coast Conference. So Boise is capable of playing at that level, but they still have something to prove here. And I don't know if they just beat San Diego State in this 4-5 matchup, if that's going to be enough on their resume. Hopefully it is. So let's say they do win that game and they get an at-large bid, Steve. And then we have Colorado State down on the bottom half of the bracket, and they beat Utah State in the second round. They make it to the final. They're still on the outer bubble. I think they have to win the conference tournament in order to get in, even if they beat a Utah State and a UNM in the final, based on the other teams ahead of Colorado State. Um, it would take, I think, a conference title for Colorado State to get in and make it that 5 team. So it is possible. I think it more depends on the other teams on the bubble and what they do. But I think everything is pretty set, right? Right now as far as that is, except for those teams. So let's hope for 5. Realistically, I'm looking at 4. I think would be a good thing to hope for.
Yeah, and I've been saying 4 here for a little bit. I think 3 is a given. I'm hopeful for 4, and there's nothing wrong with 4. I mean, we're coming off a 6, which was historic
Insane.
for the
Yeah.
for the Mountain West. I mean, that was just incredible. And absolutely nothing wrong with 4. Whether that fourth is Boise State or Colorado State, I think maybe that remains to be seen how they perform here in this tournament. But yeah, I'm with you, Ricky. I like the 4. I'm really hopeful for the 4. I think 3 would be a little bit disappointing for the Mountain West and the basketball teams that they have here. I think 5 is pushing it. I don't see us getting 5, but I think 4 is very realistic. And I think it depends on what happens here in the tournament.
They'd have to pull that inside straight in
Uh,
Vegas to get 5.
Oh, we only got 6 because of UNM winning the tournament.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll be honest. The only reason we got 6 last year
And
was because UNM won the tournament.
and I almost think, because now we've had more time, that the committee kind of punished the Mountain West last year because they forced their hand. They had to give them 6. And so they're like, okay, well, we're going to set you guys up to show, because 6, I mean, that's a huge, we're a few years from, the powerhouse conferences of a Big Ten. ACC used to, they were happy if they got 6. Now conferences are really big, and I think the SEC is supposed to get like 13 teams or something ridiculous.
Right.
But the Mountain West getting 6 teams was just absolutely amazing. And so I kind of feel like the committee last year punished them for that. Where if they end up with 3 or 4 this year that are really good solid seeds, maybe the committee doesn't mess with them too much on their seeding because they feel like it came out right.
Yeah, I would agree. And one thing I guess one like low seed we didn't really talk about that could possibly make a run in the conference tournament here is, I think, San Jose State. Because of the way they play, they would be facing New Mexico in that second round, who, they beat and then played tough, like I had mentioned. And I think the style that they play, being able to get hot from 3, and maybe a UNM team that I don't see why they wouldn't be motivated to win that game, but could possibly have their foot off the gas pedal, thinking about the NCAA tournament at this point. I don't think that's the case, but it could happen. It's only human nature right
Right.
after to have some of a letdown. So San Jose's, somehow could beat New Mexico in that second round, then they would meet the winner of San Diego State and Boise State. And we don't, anything could happen at that point. So a lower seed for me would be the Spartans of San Jose and Tim Miles if one of those bottom seeds was going to make a run.
That'd be incredible.
Yeah, I appreciate you throwing that out. That has not been the norm for the Mountain West, but hey, we always like an underdog. And I agree with you. I think Wyoming just really tailed off here at the end of the season, unfortunately for them, because they had some really close losses, close games where I'm a Poke fan, so I'm like, oh wow, they may turn this into a serious season. But I'll tell you, down the stretch here, they really kind of fell apart in terms of close games and wins and losses and stuff. But San Jose State, not a team that the Lobos need to take lightly. They're coming off the regular season championship. They had that huge celebration. For them, it's their first round matchup in the tournament. Is there a bit of a letdown? We'll see. I'm with you, Ricky. I don't think that's likely, but it's always a possibility here with any tournament. You win, you're in, you lose, you're out, and it doesn't take much for you to kind of be off your game a little bit, and then before you know it, holy cow, you can't get it back, and that team's going for it, and that may be the San Jose State team. Again, I'm not wishing for a Lobos loss here at any stretch, but I think that's a good shout out there for the Spartans, no doubt.
Yeah. So we've talked about who could win this thing, the Mountain West tournament.
Yep.
We've talked about how many teams can we get in the tournament.
Yeah.
In the big tournament. So Ricky, I got to ask you, once we get past how many do you get and all that stuff, that's a pride of conference. Who really has an opportunity to get out of this conference and make some noise? We saw San Diego State was it last year or the year before?
2 years
a couple
ago.
years
Yep.
ago, get into the Final Four. Who are the contenders that can not just get in, which is a matter of pride, but do some damage, make some noise in the big tournament.
Right. I mean, most people would say seeding is going to have a lot to do with it. And New Mexico and Utah State both look like they're sitting about an 8 or 9. New Mexico has been locked into a 8 or 9 for almost a month now. We know that's one of the toughest positions to be in the bracket. You're playing an equally, good team. In the next round, you'll probably have to face the 1 seed unless there's not a major upset. But we can't forget that 1 seeds have gone down, quite a few times over the past, decade or so. So I think to a New Mexico, to a Utah State in that 8-9 spot, they'll be looking at playing a team as good as a Gonzaga or a UConn in that first round, who will also be at 8-9, and then in a second round maybe having to play a Duke or Auburn as a 1 seed. That sounds pretty scary. But I think for New Mexico, having a player like Donovan Dent being able to take over a game, being able to control it, and just being one of the most special players, not just in the conference, but in the country. You can't count out a player like that from just elevating a team in tournament time. It happens every year where you have one player that just elevates a team. What was it, that guy from Oakland last year, Jake Galkey? Or, we'll never hear or see him again, but we knew him for those 2 weeks. And I think, we do know the names Donovan Dent and Nelly Jr. Joseph, but I think they're ready to even elevate New Mexico, to that second round, which they haven't been in some time. Um, but I think San Diego State, in my mind, assuming that they get in, maybe even having to play a play-in game, being an 11 or 10 seed, to me, they still have the highest ceiling out of any team in this conference because of the talent they have down low, the coach that they have in Brian Dutcher and the experience that he has. And it has taken some time and they have faltered a little bit, but I think having Magoo and Guath back healthy, they can stand up to some of these other teams from the SEC, from the Big 12, and match up with them. Whereas I don't know, if the Lobos and Utah State can match up with a team with the SEC. I mean, even if you take one of the bottom teams from the SEC this year, they might be a top two team in the Mountain West this year, just based on the athleticism and the talent that those schools have. We saw it last year when New Mexico had to play Clemson. At times, it didn't look like a fair fight in terms of, just the players on the court and the athleticism they had. I'm not saying that it can't be done. I think New Mexico is capable of winning games in this tournament, and Utah State. But for me, I think, again, San Diego State probably has the best chance to win multiple games or even the highest ceiling out of the conference teams. And if a Boise or Colorado State does get in, I think they're very dangerous as well. They've been two of the hottest teams in the country down the stretch here. I would not want to face either of them, in a play-in game in the tournament if that's what it comes to. I think either of them could win. And, with two leaders like a Neat Clifford of CSU and another senior, Tyson Degenhart, those guys, they're not going to go out without a fight. And they're not going to go down without swinging. And I think either of them could win a game in the tournament as well. Beyond that, I really don't know if they're strong enough to do that, Steve. But I think any team, that comes out of the Mountain West can win a game or two, at the minimum.
Well, that's awesome. I am very excited for the Mountain West Championship. I am very excited for March Madness, the NCAA Championship. Ricky, thank you so much for giving us both a recap of the season and also, how you feel things are set up here going into the Mountain West tournament.
I appreciate you guys. One final thought on New
Yeah.
Mexico, so I can get it out. I've been harboring it for some time. Is the thing I do worry about New Mexico in the tournament is that right now they play with some of the highest possessions in the country, meaning they're getting more shots up and getting the ball more than anyone, and that's mostly due to their defense generating turnovers, allowing them to get on the run and speeding up the game. Well, the problem with that down the stretch is in the tournament, in the conference tournament, the game gets tighter. There's less possessions in the game. The game isn't so free flowing. Can New Mexico adjust to having to play out of a set offense when the game is tight? Can they convert? I think that's really going to be, something they're going to have to adjust to as the style of the game changes, this time of year, and the ball just doesn't go up as much. But that was just my closing thought. Thank you guys again. Always welcome or happy to be on here with the Big Mountain with you guys. And anyone that likes what I had to say or want to follow more Mountain West action, you can find me at rthompson1050 on X and Twitter.
Awesome.
And I gotta say, JY, I think Ricky Thompson, I think,
Yep.
is the most plugged in person that I follow Mountain West basketball. So if you are a Mountain West basketball fan, follow him on X. We'd love to have you on again. You gave us a great kind of season preview a couple months ago. This was a great breakdown. Maybe you come to, we get to the next tournament, we can do another breakdown. But again, for Mountain West basketball coverage, you got to be following Ricky Thompson on Twitter, on X, and we love when you're able to join us.
I appreciate that. And people might be wondering out there, did this guy play or coach? I did not play college basketball, but I'm a 6-foot white guy, and I've been asked multiple times if I played college basketball. So to me, that's a bigger compliment than actually playing. If people are asking me if I played college basketball, then I must be decent. But thank you guys again. I do try to keep tuned in with Mountain West basketball and football. Again, you guys are building a great brand here, and just happy to join you.
Hey, we really appreciate it, Ricky. Hey, and if you guys like this episode, make sure you give it a like. Make sure you subscribe if you like our content. Make sure you follow Ricky on X. And with that, hey, we'll see you all next time on the Big Mountain.